So, Stu, welcome to the podcast, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me, man.
Absolutely. Dude, so the thing I like to start off with on this podcast is your personal heavy metal history. So, like those bands and records that you remember hearing that kind of got you into the genre and kind of maybe even stuck with you throughout your life and, as you moved on to other things.
Um, Trying to think. I think like my first exposure to heavy metal was like my older brothers were had a bedroom at the back of our house, and maybe I don't know, I was young, maybe I don't know, 5, 6, something like that, like old enough to like start rooting around in other people's shit, like when they weren't home and at school or work or something. I remember like they had Motley Crue like Shout at the Devil with that really like that's a pretty striking like album cover. And I
Yeah.
remember like wanting to check that out, like, whoa, this looks like bad news. I should definitely check this out. And then I heard it and I remember thinking it was whack as fuck, like the visual identity and then what they actually sounded like. And so I don't remember when like the first heavy thing I liked would have been, but it was probably like somewhere like driving around in the car listening to like Misfits or like trying to think, man, like Danzig, Slayer, Sepultura, like I guess I kind of went right into the deep end because that's what my older brothers, I'm a lot younger than them,
Okay.
and that's they were like jamming when they were in like high school and I would have been in like elementary school. So I missed all of like the where like most people my age, like we're probably hearing like, I don't know, Led Zeppelin and Guns N' Roses and Metallica. Like mine, like I heard those bands, but the first ones that I actually like thought were cool and listened to would have been like Slayer, White Zombie, Machine Head, shit like that was like my first like taste of it where I like was getting tapes and listening to it and just like, wow, this is so heavy, so cool. Like, love this shit.
So your older brothers were also kind of into metal too, and they kind of like got you like into it a little bit from just seeing that stuff and hearing it what they had.
Yeah, and I think it was more it wasn't like intentional, like them like being like, yo, this is cool, check this out. It was more like being way younger than them. And
Yeah.
then like just how you look up to your older siblings where like they're like skateboarding in the backyard and like fucking playing basketball and they're like jamming Pantera and whatever they're listening to, and then like as a little kid you're like, whoa, that's pretty cool, like I want to listen to Cowboys from Hell. And then I had like friends in like elementary school and going into junior high that like then you start noticing there's like a kid with a Megadeth shirt that also likes Pantera that's like skipping class and smoking weed and, like so then those things all start like coming together. It,
Right.
it it wasn't like they were like, hey, check this out. It was more like being like a little shadow on the wall of like what the big kids are doing, and they just happen to be listening to punk rock and like metal shit. Where if they would have been like big into like hip hop or something, maybe I would have went that route too.
Yeah.
But in my household, it was predominantly like heavy, fast music, and then country music is what was like played nonstop.
Yeah, I was gonna say, man, it feels like once you get into like, teens, like 15, 16 years old, and you get in like junior high and high school, that's when like the melting pot of music like really starts in for a lot of people, where you're shown a bunch of things outside of your immediate like brothers and sisters, and because that's how I found a lot of music is like through my high school friends, and then I would go beyond that and find stuff and show them stuff to listen to too, and be like,
Yeah.
hey man, have you heard this band Dimmu Borgir? Like, check that shit out, and everybody be like, what is this? This is garbage. I don't want to listen to this.
Yeah, yeah. That happened to me too. And it was more like with the punk stuff where
Hmm.
um it was just like then you start seeing kids and like you start noticing there are a few punk rock kids and it's like, oh shit, a lot of these bands that I really fuck with that I like are somehow tied to like punk, hardcore. You know what I mean? You
Yes.
start like finding the underground stuff, and then I guess I started going to shows early, and through that, like we had moved to Idaho, and so I started going to shows, booking shows. Some of my friends were playing in like local bands, and so I just got really involved in like the DIY scene young and just have never really left it.
Yeah, man, I feel like the DIY stuff and punk have always kind of went hand in hand. And I've ever since I've been doing this podcast, man, I've always been a big proponent that like a lot of metal wouldn't have happened without punk because a lot of that early thrash metal stuff was just like really sped up punk riffs, you know? And then they just
Yeah.
added like their version of what was heavier from punk out of that. And I've always kind of maintained that progression from the punk rock stuff in the 80s.
Yeah, same here. And like me, like I've just noticed the stuff I really like from like the Rolling Stones to Social Distortion to Motorhead to like Venom, like all that shit goes back to like the same four chords and you just
Hmm.
speed them up. It's a little more aggressive, but like to me, there's a through line of all of that stuff, whether it's like, American country and western from like western swing all the way up. So I agree. Like I think it's all interconnected. Only kids who are really passionate about one little subgenre give a fuck. Everybody else that sticks around long enough, you sort of realize that like, you know, if there wasn't blues, there's not country music. If there's not country music, there's not like rock and roll. If there's not rock and roll, there's not glam or punk or thrash. Like it all kind of, you know,
Yeah, goes back to the same thing. Yeah, I
yeah.
agree, man. So along those lines, well, how did you start becoming a musician? Was it like in your family? Like, was it also from your brothers? Did you just decide to do it on your own?
No, I wouldn't say I'm a musician now either. Like, I mean, I guess I am, but no, I had like my older brother Curtis played like acoustic guitar a lot, and then it mainly was, that thing that happens with like punk and hardcore scenes where you start off going to shows and just like circle pitting and like pitting and two-stepping and stage diving, and then you're like the dude booking the shows, and then at some point like it just becomes so blurry where there's no difference. Like all these cool bands that you love are playing and there's no stage, and like maybe you're plugging in a shitty PA and it's on the floor, but then the kids in the show are now part of the show. And then next thing you know, like me and my friends are in a band and like none of us were in band in school or musicians. It's like
Yeah.
maybe the one guy that was talented is the drummer, because like I would say that that's like the hardest instrument initially. And
Yeah.
then everybody can play like three chords, and once you can figure those out, then it's like you can play a 7-second song. You know what I mean? It's like, so to me, like the musician stuff came just from just loving like going to shows, and then you start playing in a band, and I was singing and couldn't play guitar, so then I'm trying to articulate like these are the bands and the riffs I like try and do something like this to somebody verbally, and then it's like you pick up a guitar and you start mangling it, and you're like eventually you can kind of get what's in your head out. So to me
Yeah.
it's all, I don't really see a difference between like the storytelling part or the visual art or the sonic stuff. And so I've just kind of through the years, in order to like express myself, I've just kind of figured out how to do everything from like copy and paste show flyers to like I can cut a music video or like write a song or like anything that's involved with being in a band or like really any of that stuff. Like I wouldn't say I'm an artist or a like musician or any of that. I don't like waiting for other people to like do what I have in my head. And so I
Hmm.
just kind of always figured out how to do shit. Like I can't barely tune a guitar by ear. I only know like
It's rough,
four
man.
chord shapes. Like I can't play a scale. And so like I write all this music and do stuff. And sometimes like my friends who are really talented like ask me things and I'm like, I don't know, bro. It just sounds cool. Like I have no idea what I'm doing. So like when you tell me that like this is really interesting that you're playing this diminished or whatever the fucking like nerd music language, I'm just
Right.
like, Me stew, me make rock, me jam, me no no. Like I'm the worst. So like, if some kids listen to this, like just fucking make noise. Like do your thing. You don't have to learn shit. You don't have to do what anybody tells you. You can go a long ways just being completely fucking stupid and just like having fun. Like I'm a testament to that. Whatever feels good and is fun, it's probably cool. Like
I
that's
had
it.
that same dynamic with my best friend, dude. Like I'm like a terrible guitar player, but I know enough to like get around and do stuff. And sometimes I'll have an idea and I'll share it with him and I'm like, I don't know, man, it kind of is supposed to go like this or whatever. And he's like, "Oh, you mean like this?" And he'll just fucking do it. I'm like, what the fuck? Like, how did you
Yeah.
even know to do that? And he's the same way. He knows like, scales and chords and progressions and all that shit. I'm like, you're speaking Greek to me, dude. I don't know what you were talking about right now. But if you can tell me like what the power chord is or, what time signature, I kind of got that. But
Sure.
yeah, it's funny like how far you can get with just like minimum knowledge of guitar theory and stuff like that. But that's like you said, that's the fun of it. It's more pure than like scientifically breaking down everything like note by note or measure by measure and all that kind of crazy shit that some people do. Which more power to them, but I can't
Yeah,
do
and
it.
I think whatever is like cool is cool. Like if you're really talented, like gifted person, you make incredibly complicated, awesome shit, like cool, you know what I mean? But you can also do a lot with like literally two chords. Just
Yeah,
droning fucking noise is can also be just as cool as the most intricate, beautiful melody.
yeah. Before we kind of get a little more into music stuff, I mean, please correct me if I'm wrong here, but I assume you are a movie buff and possibly a horror movie buff. Is that a correct assumption there?
Yeah, man, I love movies, I love books, horror, Western. I really have always just kind of been drawn to, even when I was little. Like
Yeah.
I remember faking being sick at school because they were showing like Big Trouble in Little China when I was in
Oh,
like, I don't even know what grade, like maybe fifth grade or some shit. And like just knowing it's going to be on like network TV the next day because that's all we had. And I definitely remember like, I don't know why that stuff speaks to me. And like, that's a great movie, don't get me wrong, but
yeah.
like, I have like a memory of like being actually sick, throwing up, and like having like one of them stomach flus,
Hmm.
and then like being miserable. But then the original Night of the Living Dead was on TV in black and white. And I remember like, whatever, just watching that and just being like, wow, holy shit. And it was old then, like, and a
Yeah.
lot of that old stuff didn't really, I don't know. My parents are a lot older than me too, because like I'm the youngest kid. And so like my dad was like in his 40s when he had me. My mom was like 36, and they're like total like grew up like doing nothing but cowboy stuff. So like I remember like some of the stuff they'd be into, like these old like westerns and stuff. Now I appreciate them a lot more, but when I was younger, like I don't know, I just wasn't into it. But like horror, sci-fi, that stuff really spoke to me. Like the visuals and just like the way you feel like watching these like kind of demented like things with a lot of suspense and like
Hmm.
just that stuff always where some people feel uneasy and are like, I don't like that and shy away from it. I was always more captivated and like drawn to kind of the more extreme stuff, I guess you could say.
Yeah, I feel you there, man, because I've always said that like horror and heavy metal kind of go hand in hand. They have overlapping, I guess, people that are into the same things. And judging from like watching your music videos and incorporating the story in such a way that you do with all the effects and everything, I was like, well, this guy has got to be into horror movies. Like, I would be very surprised if he wasn't.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've read more Western books and like horror books than probably anything at this point. So it's like definitely something that through my life, just like heavy music, like those are some of the things that like I still to this day am like seeking out new authors and new filmmakers, and like I really enjoy it. Like just that's just shit I'm into. So
Yeah.
part of doing this band and like the videos and everything, it's kind of just like it's just a passion project of like contributing something in these like genres and these scenes that I'm into. And so it's like my band and the songs I write and the way that we do things is kind of just an homage to all these people that have inspired me. And I think it's important to like keep, I know there's like thrash and like Black and Death and stuff, but at one point there weren't a lot of bands like incorporating that thrash sound. And so that's something that when I start a new band, I'm like, I definitely want to like put out stuff that reminds me of the bands that I fell in love with, which I really like, you know, the 80s, early 90s, like thrash crossover bands. And I love death metal, like early death metal stuff, you know? So
Yep.
I tried to incorporate all of those things. And by the time I'm done, like we kind of become our own thing because I mix so many different things from punk and hardcore and thrash. So yeah, for me, it's like I love all that stuff, you know? That's like what this whole project is just my distillation of all those interests, you know?
So I wonder if I could get your opinion on this because I was thinking about it as I was like listening to the record and kind of reading everything. And how, what is your opinion on From Dusk Till Dawn? Would you consider that a Western horror film, but like a modern Western in a sense?
Yeah, I mean, I'm not like I've never went to film school or anything like that, so I'm pretty uneducated as far as like what when people put like the confines of a genre, like I'm the wrong guy to ask. But to me, like I remember watching that in the theater and I loved the first part. Like it's cool when it gets to the like vampires and shit, when the
Yeah.
mariachi band and everybody's turning. But I remember really thinking at the time that I loved the movie much more. And then when it went to the horror kind of over the top stuff, I felt like it kind of dipped down. Now
Okay.
I appreciate it a lot more, but I would say, yeah, it's probably got definitely a little bit of a, say, like a crime noir Western, you know, like a neo-Western thing going on. But I think Tarantino loved, like, I mean, I don't know. You can just tell watching his shit. Like, that guy probably loved Peck and Paw movies and
Yeah.
like Rio Bravo and stuff. So it's like, I can see him and Robert Rodriguez for sure. Like, I remember the first time I seen El Mariachi, it's
Oh man. Classic.
like that stuff, like, I mean, I can see the stuff that they like. They liked a lot of the same people I liked growing up. So I kind of can see the, you know, it's just like with music. Like when you hear somebody biting your favorite band, it's like, I don't get offended by that. So I think
Right.
it's cool when you watch a Tarantino movie and like you see him stealing a shot from a film that you've seen. And it's like I think I do that stuff too. Like I think everybody does. Only an
I agree.
asshole acts like they create anything from the ether, you know?
Yeah, I agree with that sentiment, man. There, because I watch a lot of movies, so there's so many times I'm watching something and I'm like, I have seen that shot before. Or like I've seen this weird pan and zoom or like snap zoom kind of thing, and like it's just one of those things that like directors are inspired visually by their directors, so of course they're gonna borrow and pay homage to like the people that inspired them. Same way with like a musician would be like, man, I really like this riff. What can I do that's my take on this riff and put it into my music? And as long as
Yeah.
you're not copying it note for note for note, like what's the problem with that, you know?
And even if you are, I don't give a fuck. Like put your own style on it. It can be the exact same. Like take a Ramones chord progression and like I don't know. Like I can totally hear like a black metal band doing the same fucking three notes and it's all tremolo picking. But if you put this different drum beat behind it, it's a Ramones song, you know?
I mean, hey man, thanks to that lawsuit with Ed Sheeran and what's it, Marvin Gaye, I believe his estate. Uh, they have agreed with Ed Sheeran that if you copy a chord progression, it's not copying a song. Like you can't copyright chord progression. So you could literally copy a same chord progression from something and it wouldn't be copyright infringement according to that lawsuit that happened, which is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I get it. There's only so many chords. Like
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
can only do so much, you know?
Yeah.
A lot of that too. I think people get really precious about things and at some point, you know, the like the pendulum swings and all of a sudden what they create is these very precious things that they feel no one else can do. But I come from the other school. Like my family had a junkyard. Like we're fucking pretty trashy. So I'm like, take something somebody else had, make it something new, and that's cool. You know what I mean? Whether it's physical or art, like I think repurposing things is also beautiful and interesting, you know.
So how do you feel about this current wave of I guess AI that is trying to copy music and art, and I guess it's kind of what AI does. It extrapolates everything that it's been fed and makes something new. Like, what's kind of your opinion on that with music?
I mean, I don't really know because it's not like I have a record that somebody's given me and been like, yo, this is amazing. And it's an AI thing.
True.
So, I mean, I don't know what it's called, but Sam Pura, who I've made these last three records with that produces and engineers them, he had an app of some sort of AI thing and he sent me like he sent it some prompts of like whatever it was, it like had like rock music and like Western stuff, and he's kind of like just demonstrating that, look, I can make you a hit record, like a hit song. Let's do like a Nickelback Spirit World radio rock song with country influences and whatever it spit out. And what he sent me, like it had lyrics and stuff. And I mean it wasn't bad.
Yeah.
But like when you're listening to it, like the guitars don't have definition. It's just like kind of white noise. Like the kick and snare made sense, and it had like big choruses and like it sounded like radio rock to me. But like being involved in bands, like I'm listening to it and it's like that's clearly not a guitar. It's just kind of like
Right.
a noise in the same frequencies. And to me, I doubt that I really like even bands playing live, like with tracks and all that, like
Hmm.
I'll enjoy the show, sure, but I'm way more captivated by somebody playing an instrument, even if it's out of tune or their like vocal performance is whatever. Maybe they're fucking stayed up all night and like voice sounds like shit, but whatever it is that night, maybe it's flat, maybe it's a little disgusting. I'm always more captivated by the one of one performance and somebody actually like giving you something than I am of like the perfect, somebody where the chorus comes in and all of a sudden there's like an 8-part harmony on this fucking metalcore band
Yeah.
and it sounds okay. And for the like average Joe out there, they probably can't even tell. So like do your thing, boo. But to me, I doubt AI is gonna make something where I would like grab a record that I really like by people that like I don't know. I just think like take like the best bands when they're like in their stride and pick an album. Can AI make something that makes me feel that way? I'm gonna say no, but
Yeah,
I
you got a
don't know.
good point there.
Like to me, music and all of this and books and shit, it's like I'm sure a robot can like if you feed it a bunch of prompts and say, give me a Tarantino-esque movie. I mean, maybe it'll be something cool and like wildly unique, maybe. But
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, all that shit, that the language models where they have all this art from people that should be copyrighted and they have access to it. So if they can make something like I rip off bands I like, so if AI rips off a bunch of bands, can they do it in a way that is actually cool and makes me feel something? We'll see. Because the only thing I heard was like literally it wasn't even a whole song. It's like 45 seconds. And I mean, I didn't want to go back and listen to it a second time. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? So to me, I understand why visual artists are very concerned because, like, say for show flyers and stuff, where maybe you'd give a dude $200 to do a flyer and maybe you just pull that shit up on AI and get something that is serviceable. Like, I see the concern, but even all the bands, all the people that always argue about things from the point of like, oh, trust fund baby gets on the big tour because they know this guy. And like I hear that, and maybe somebody gets pushed ahead for whatever reason. But at the end of the day, if you make really good stuff that connects with people, you will get your stuff out, you'll travel the world, you'll have some sort of a career. And so until the fucking Cyberdyne Systems is making stuff that connects, then I don't think, I think maybe for the 10,000 bands that are generic and kind of suck anyways,
Yeah.
maybe they're not better than AI. Maybe it's all just kind of noise. But if you really make cool stuff, you're going to find an audience. And I find it hard to believe that AI, fucking like a hologram fucking metal band with AI songs, is ever going to pack a club and have people losing their minds. I mean, maybe some weird like fetishy thing could, but I don't know. Live music has such a like palpable like thing that happens when you play live and people are feeling your shit and there's energy.
Yeah.
Like, how's a robot going to do that? You know, is it all going to be tracks and then a human being's going to be up there pretending to play an AI written song because it's a hit? Like, I have no idea, but that shit sounds like very far fetched to me that I would ever love it, you know?
Yeah, it's been strange, man, because like you see a lot of, or at least from stuff that I follow, I see every now and then a band will pop up on social media or wherever, and they're like, "Hey, check out my new stuff I did." And then like you can clearly tell it's AI written, all this stuff. People call it out in the comments. Their album covers all AI and all that stuff. And it's like you said, you listen to music and there's just like nothing behind it. Like it just feels so hollow. And like me and my friends have also messed around with like these apps that like generate songs, and like they're funny and you can make some goofy stuff, but it's nothing that's like you said, that's captivating. It's just like it's dumb, and like it might get you a laugh if you put in like a funny prompt, or like even if you're trying to be serious with it. It just, I don't know, man. It doesn't it just feels hollow half the time, like when I've heard it. And I I I, I wonder like how we're gonna kind of combat that, because I see people fall into it often where they're like, oh my God, this band's so cool, and then people are like, hey man, that's not a real band, like they're fake, it's all AI, and they're like, what? Like, how do you
Yeah,
guys
see, I
even?
haven't had that experience. I haven't listened to anything or
Yeah,
like watched film. I haven't had that experience where something that I legitimately was like, well, this is cool. I fuck with this. I like this. And then
yeah,
somebody is like, oh, that's all AI. On the visual art side, I have seen stuff where it's like, you can mess around with prompts and it's like you can get something that clearly is ripping off like Frank Frazetta or like Simon
yeah.
Bisley or like Boris or these like artists that I love. And yeah, I can get you something kind of cool, but like I can still tell that I can tell what it's ripping off and I can tell because it's just not perfect yet. But when it is perfect, somebody that has the taste of things that I like, that has the skill to make the prompt, I'm not so sure I'm going to hate on that person. I know my graphic design and like Illustrator homies don't want to hear that, but like if you can
Right there
use
with them,
AI
man. I'm
tool
dealing
to
with the same
create
stuff
something,
half the time.
yeah, if somebody can do something that I like with whatever tool, whether it's a guitar, AI, a fucking Smith Corona typewriter, whatever it is, if you make something with whatever tools at your disposal that I think is interesting, I like, I don't think I'm not the type of person to stand on like a moral high ground and be like, there's this thing I really like, but I can't like it because I have, you know what I mean? Like
It's a
I'm anti
robot that made it.
guy because I also make up songs. If AI puts me out of business, I mean, like my band out of business, I mean, clearly my band sucks. So that's kind of where I'm at with it.
I guess so. I don't know. I mean, I kind of agree. I don't think we'll ever get to that point where like it's going to put people out of like their art and profession, but it is kind of scary like how smart and like, I don't know, man. My friend was showing me something the other day where it's like, um have you heard of this guy called There I Ruined It, where he takes like a Conway Twitty song and puts it to the beat of like 50 Cent's In the Club, but it's Conway Twitty singing it, and all the lyrics are 50 Cents, and it's all AI, but it sounds like a Conway Twitty song put to the beat and everything else of like 50 Cents In the Club. It's kind of crazy, man. And like
Yeah, and
if
maybe
nobody
like
told me it was
that. See,
fake,
to me, I was around when the first 50 Cent record came out. It was a big record. Like
yeah,
all of us jammed it. I love Conway Twitty.
Yeah,
Maybe that's not the mashup that's I need, but like I don't
it's
know.
so
Maybe
strange.
that stuff will just become. But what's the difference between pop music? Like I never got into like
Mm,
mainstream pop music where
yeah,
like every once in a while stuff penetrates where I'm like, that's a great song. But through my life, I've never really been a big consumer of like top 40 pop shit. And part of
right.
that is I don't connect with it because yes, it's an amazing song. Yes, the shows are like big fucking productions and probably great. And I've seen tons of these bands on festivals and things. And I don't hate it. Like, I'm not a hater, but I don't love it. And part of that that keeps me connected to the underground is like that authentic thing where it's like I'm connected to this person telling songs about their life that they write and their art. And when you have a team of 12 songwriters, top line writers and fucking five producers on a song. Yes, it's a global hit smash, but I can count on one hand the number of those albums that I like cherish that I keep. So to me, if AI becomes a new pop music thing and there's like I think there'll still always be things that I connect with and it probably I'll never connect with that stuff anyways,
Yeah.
in a real way where it's like important to me. So I don't know.
Yeah, no, I just think it's like a weird, interesting kind of thing that's going on in the music world. And since it kind of, for whatever reason, the conversation is skewed that way, it's kind of why I wanted to touch on it. But kind of getting
Yeah.
back to what we were talking about a second ago with like films and stuff, I want to know some things that you've enjoyed recently, maybe along like horror or whatever that you've seen that you were like, God damn, this was a good fucking movie.
Yeah, what have I seen lately? I just saw I thought Nosferatu was great. I love
Yeah.
Eggers. Like all four of his films are fantastic. And I've been lucky enough to I don't know why I saw The Witch in the theater. Like I didn't go with my old lady. I went with a couple friends. I didn't remember this, but like we went to a UNLV basketball game and then apparently I was like, "Yo, we got to go watch this movie The Witch." But
Yeah.
like I've enjoyed all of his films.
Oh yeah.
And then
They're all incredible.
my mom was here. She's up visiting my twin brother, but she's been living with us a lot since my dad passed away. And like, I get a lot of shit because I like weird stuff. And so, like, we take turns. We're a household of rotating. So it's like, it's my pick. And then when it's my mom's pick, every once in a while she'll pick something, but nine times out of 10, she's like, "Oh, I don't care, you pick." So you get double picks. So it's really
Nice.
just me and my girl alternating. And so I kind of been on a body horror like kick,
Ooh.
revisiting some stuff. And then there were some things that I saw a long time ago that I didn't remember or that have just kind of had like these big I don't know, like they're kind of notorious or like things that I hear about. So like one of them was Eraserhead.
Yeah.
Um, like I queued that up and not a hit. My mom and Jen were just like fucking lizard baby bullshit. What the fuck are we watching? And so
David
it's
Lynch
like a
for you.
slog, and I feel bad. And I'm like, that is a twisted, for that being so early in his career. I'm like, that's some wild ass shit. But then like what else did we watch? The new Demi Moore one.
Yeah, I was gonna say the substance because you were talking about body
Yeah,
horror.
Substance.
Yeah.
Just
Oh
watched
my
that. That
God.
was great. I like that
Oh,
guy other movie too,
yeah,
Revenge, I think.
Revenge. Oh,
And then I can't think of the name of it, but there was a one with Kristen Stewart we just watched with fucking this She-Hulk fucking
oh,
chick
Love Lies
lifting a
Bleeding.
bunch of weights. Yeah, that I like that too. That was
Yeah,
great. The
that was a
50
good
foot
one.
tall She-Hulk fucking spazzo thing at the end. But yeah, I tend to like stuff. Like I'm not the type of person that's a snob where you watch it and then you just say there's nothing redeeming here. This is a total waste. So I generally like things and, you know, find something, but those are some of the things I've watched lately where stuck out that I thought were, it's a good time,
I
Might
mean,
get me in
those.
trouble with my picks where it's like I lose privileges because it gets too fucking weird, but What can you do?
I mean, going for a racer head, that's a big reach, that's for sure. I would be wary of even being like, "Hey, you guys want to watch a racer head tonight?" But no, it's a great movie though. I'm
I
with you on that one.
I thought that I had seen it like a long time ago, but it was like
Yeah.
hazy and I have a really shitty memory. So sometimes there's stuff where like my girl or like friends of mine will like tell me things and they're like, you were fucking there. And I have no recollection at this point. So I'm like that with films too, where like um films, books, records, like there's a lot of things where I'm like, oh, I've never seen that. What is that? And then I watch it and then something will jar my memory and I'm like, oh yeah. But I had thought that I had seen Eraserhead. And then after watching, I was like, either I blocked this from my mind because whatever reason, or because it's all brand new. I don't know where this is going, but this is wild shit. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I don't typically get too worked up about like famous people dying. But man, I really do love David Lynch's work, and it was a bummer that he passed away really recently. And also, man, I'm sorry, condolences. I'm sorry to hear about your father passing away too, man. It's got to be tough to deal with that and
Yeah. I mean,
try and write a
it's
record, you know?
it's things things are what they are, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it just, those are all things that too, like the like I work for a living and my band is like a really great creative outlet that I have.
Mhm.
And then being able to like kind of put like somebody on a different interview was asking me about this new record and like sonically and like textures that are in there that I forget the word they use, but I was trying to like because on one hand I don't know what I'm doing, I just do what I like. And so it's not like I have an A&R guy that's like, "Oh, we should do blah blah blah." I'm the exact
Right.
opposite. Barely talk to our label, barely talk to my A&R guy and like I love Mike Gitter. But like I write demos, I make the whole thing, and I don't even think I showed him the record until it was completely recorded and I had like had a rough mix. So like somebody was asking me something, I was like, the only thing I could think is like maybe subconsciously some of this stuff that ends up on these records is like, as I'm writing these songs, it's like you're dealing with like a parent passing away, a parent that I haven't lived with in over 20 years moving in, and like then my mom had a heart attack, like all these crazy things, right? And so like as all these things are happening, I'm also making art and I'm also making decisions on songwriting and things. And I just follow my gut on whatever I feel is like the North Star. So I think in a lot of ways it's hard to it's hard to say, but I feel like real life on this record like maybe comes out in certain parts. Like someone was talking about the dynamics of things from like a arrangement and composition thing, and I'm like, I don't really think along them terms, but I think more like emotionally maybe over the last couple of years there's been a lot of highs, a lot of really cool like dream shit happening, then also some like really terrible lows. And so as you're making art during all of this, maybe it ends up on the LP. You know what I mean? If that
Yeah.
makes any sense. But yeah.
So when you're kind of dealing with all this stuff in your personal life and you're having to write songs that capture moods and you're also wanting the song to capture a narrative of the story of everything that's been from your books, like how are you trying to like combine those things all together into one like maybe not cohesive piece, but something that feels, authentic to you. Not that anything would be inauthentic, but like, working through all this stuff versus like the music you're trying to get out there.
Who the fuck knows, bro? You get up, you fucking put your pants on and go to work, and make sure you can pay your rent. And then like when you get the chance to like do something you like, which for me, like I like to sit around and noodle on guitar. Like I
Yeah.
was sitting there for an hour before this interview, just like all dog shit. Everything I played sucked, but like messing around with open D tuning and just Travis picking and like I don't know where that's going. And right now, today, unlistenable. Like my cat Fox hung out in a chair and listened to me like beat the shit out of this guitar with these horrible things, new tuning that I'm exploring. But like fast forward, it's some point that will be a thing that'll be on a record. It may be a couple years, but like I don't know, like the I would say it's maybe that's the thing of like making art is knowing when something is cool and when it will work. And I do like records like where there's a side A, there's a side B. I don't like shit that's too long. I don't like when bands completely flip what they're doing and go from being one band to another. Like I
Mhm.
have bands I love where like they've had five different like reinventions of themselves, and there may be a few of them that I love, love, love. And so on one hand, I want to be a band that's not, and I say band when I mean I write all this stuff. I got made fun of earlier today for saying band, and they're like, "But don't you do it all?" I'm like, "Yeah,
Yeah.
but I'm an asshole. It sounds weird to be like me, me, me all the time." But like, I want this to be the kind of project where I can just explore whatever I want and do whatever I want. That's important to me. And I think um like trying to make a record that's like my favorite records in some ways gives you guardrails where it's like you have to do 10 songs because that's what's on the record contract. Like I have to turn in 10 compositions that are new. Like so that's one thing that I know I have to do. And then I don't want it to be too long and drawn out. I don't want to be Death Western too, because I also hate when bands do that. My favorite bands like
Yeah.
do a great record and then the next one you can tell it's them being afraid to do anything different. So they make like a version of that one and it's just not quite as good. And then they do it again and pretty soon I lose interest. So I try to just take all these like little rules that you have to have in place, whether they're like my own weird shit where I'm like 28 minutes is pushing it. Like really you get about 15 minutes of my attention anymore. And anything over that, it's either the most profound, greatest record I've heard in forever, or I'm grabbing like three or four songs, putting them on a playlist, and that's it. Like anymore, I probably don't find records where I listen to front to back very often that's like newly created stuff.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have my canon of stuff that I love, but I mean, it's pretty rare when I grab something that front to back, I'm like, wow, I fuck with this. So I really try with Spirit World to make stuff that I think maybe every song won't be your favorite, but at least you can hit play and make it through to the end without some kind of weird slog where you're like, okay, skip, done with this, next band, fucking moving on. You know what I
Yeah.
mean?
That was something I noticed. The record felt pretty brief and not like in a bad way or a good way. It was just like you're fucking in and you're out and you're like, damn, that was it. Maybe I want to start it over. It was kind of like
Yeah.
it didn't outstay its welcome, which I do agree. I think a lot of records, man, people push it where they're trying to write these 40, 50-minute opuses, and I'm like, I don't have the time for that anymore. I appreciate it,
Yeah.
but
And
goddamn.
yeah, and my life is kind of set up too, where like things that I do, like if I'm doing chores around the house or I'm doing stuff, I think like a 25-minute like burst of attention musically
Mhm.
is kind of where I'm at in my life, you know? Like, so to me, I think that's a pretty good gauge. Anything, I don't know, the idea of like a double album or like where bands used to do 18 tracks and it'd be like a fucking, 75-minute runtime. I'm like, I can't do that shit. Like,
Have
you
a
know what I mean?
Metallica's S&M on repeat.
Yeah. Yeah. And I also like when I listen to Helldorado, like I have some really heavy songs that ended up coming off of there that I demoed out that I thought for sure were going to be on this record. But
Mhm.
then when you start like trying to make something that works, I'm like, if I add them, then it's like it fucks up the sequencing and then it gets long. And I'm like, they're great songs and maybe they never see the light of day because like that's the thing. Like if you don't put it out while it's hot, I usually turn my back on stuff and just like, okay, this is bullshit, over it. Got to write a new thing. But like I did kind of struggle with that too, where I'm like, I really like heavy music. So part of me with Spirit World, it's like trying to balance that. But I think Heldorado's cool and like it flows. But like I feel like I have some really heavy, like awesome songs that like maybe I got to do like a 7 inch or an EP or something and in between albums or something. You know what I mean? Like some sort of
Yeah, like an EP.
stuff. Yeah, because that's like like I got some new stuff I'm working on where I'm like, even in my head, I'm like, you're fucking crazy. Like your record's just coming out and you're already like trying to figure out like what you're gonna do with new material. But that's my favorite part of all this. So like I give myself a pass on not truly thinking I'm psychotic for like already making new stuff, even though it's like it's
If you're feeling the creative bug, you got to go with it, man. Like, why stifle it, you know?
yeah, and it's when you're working with other labels and managers and stuff, like there's a reason why bands are on like a 2 year cycle. It's tried and true, and it's like, you know what I mean? You don't want to, because as soon as you start, if I were to put out another record in like 6 months, you just kill Helldorado. It's like then you have a new thing out. So I get it. But that's something that I see the bands that are really prolific, like I don't know, like trying to think of somebody, but like King Gizzard or somebody where it's like four fucking full lengths in the span of like 18 months. It's
Yeah.
like lucky motherfucker, that'd be great. No job, just like cooking in the lab, making a bunch of crazy shit. Like I really love that idea too.
Yeah, I was gonna say, so I've been listening to the record over a couple weeks, and I had a friend over yesterday, and we are doing our normal weekly game night, and we both like it. It's my same friend I was talking about earlier, who's way better guitar than me. So I was like, hey
Yeah.
man, I need to just kind of like brush up on this record before this interview tomorrow. Do you want to listen to it? He's like, yeah, of course. So we listened to it, and the metal songs come on, all that shit, and then like the kind of more southern western stuff happens. He's like, is is this the same band? And I was like, yeah, dude, it's the same record. He's like, what the fuck? And like he
Yeah.
means this in a good way. It's not like a what the fuck and like what the fuck is this shit. It's like he was like, and we finished the whole record and all that, and got to the final kind of like slow western song and everything, and he was like, dude, if you when you're talking to this guy, I want you to tell him there's a lot of thrash metal, a lot of heavy metal bands out there, but there are not a lot of, in fact, there's none that are doing what he's doing right now. So that's kind of fucking wild that he can kind of combine those two things and make such a cohesive and awesome sounding uh style of metal with the western stuff. And I was like, yeah, man, I agree with you, but
Yeah.
that was his take on it as like an outsider, because he'd never heard of you guys either. So I thought it was fun to
Yeah.
kind of
See, and
share it
that's
with him.
cool. 'Cause, like I'm still at the point where I'm a handful of people I talk to have heard the record, but it's really one of those things where it's like when you make stuff and then you know how you feel and like
Hmm.
my inner circle of homies, but then you kind of wonder what people would think, but then kind of to like is a bulwark or a like shield of your own sensitive, like creative voice. Like at least I have to just be like, I don't care what anyone thinks. Go fuck yourself. If you don't like my shit, you got a basement, like start your own motherfucking band, bitch.
Right.
So like that's like my like whatever you want to call that. And so like it's so cool when you make something to finally get people to hear it from like all walks of life. And so part of that, like it's so cool to hear somebody like at a game night just hear a band they never heard of and like to think what we're doing is cool or unique is like I mean, it's nice, that's the kind of pat on the back where I'm sure I'll get a lot of people that'll be like, the Reddit hardcore thread that'll be like poop from butt, fuck this band, what the fuck, And like
Yeah.
that stuff, it's laughable because I'm like, I get it, like, sure, whatever. But, you know, I think for me, the like combining the things and doing it it's not so much like a contrived thing of like, oh, if I do this, people will herald my band as like maybe they'll think I'm some kind of creative, like artistic fucking savant. Like that's none of that stuff is like comes into play. It's just me
Right.
making what I like. And it's half the time I pick up a guitar, more than half. I would say 3/4 of the time I'm like playing heavy shit. But then the other quarter of that, like I'm playing country music and I'm playing rockabilly riffs. And so when I sat down to make this record, more so than the last couple, because I just wanted to, So it's like, for me, it's not weird, but other people hear it and they're like, wow, that's crazy that they're combining these things. But to me, the way I grew up and the stuff I like, it feels like it works. So, you know,
I mean, it does
it's
work,
not
man.
like it's not like I came up with like intentionally to combine weird stuff.
Yeah.
I'm just weird. And so this is me expressing my weird stuff. So it's in that regard, it's very easy.
I mean, I definitely appreciate the harsh vocals over some rockabilly and like Western riffs. It sounds good. I mean, the way it kind of juxtaposes each other, it just fucking works, man. So I don't know.
Yeah,
And
and
then
I
like
think it's
going into
cool.
the
Like,
hardcore stuff, it's just like a perfect encapsulation of like, in my opinion, East Coast hardcore. I don't know how you feel about that, but it sounds more
yeah,
like East Coast hardcore than West Coast.
yeah, I mean, I'm a hardcore nerd, so like I can get into the nitty gritty, but to me, it's like I like sheer terror. I like fucking,
Yeah.
and I like Dropkick Murphys, and I like Blood for Blood, and
Oh man.
to me, like you put on Poison Idea and some of these bands that like I love that shit, love, 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 and I love that stuff vocally and like catchy of the delivery of the like fast verses and choruses probably a lot more than metal styles. I love the riffs of metal,
Yeah.
like the groove and the intensity and the like the style for sure. But it's like that's also a thing of like the vocals on this record are different than the last one. And
Hmm.
it's just combining things and like I don't know how to explain it. Just like make what I think is cool in the moment.
Yeah, I mean, it must have been something that just like felt natural to do too, since you were like trying all these things as well, I assume, right?
Yeah, and it's like if I were to scream as hard as I did on Pagan Rhythms, one, I can't physically like blah 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 that fast screaming that hard. And so on songs like No Vacancy in Heaven or Waiting on the Reaper, like those verses are like long. I wrote those
Yeah.
like a country song, and it's like, yes, they have couplets and they have a rhyming scheme that duplicates, and like the syllable counts are like somewhat the math works, but it's like to deliver that, it's you have to take some of the heaviness off. And I don't want to hear like I don't like the cheese ball like super deep death metal when it's just like an incoherent roar that's just like whoa 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 whoa, whoa, that matches up with the riff. So like I don't love that style. I like shouted punk rock stuff. So to me it made sense to be like, let's try something like that and see, what where it goes.
So another thing I was curious about with the album is since there is a narrative that flows through the record, how conscious of an ideal was it for you to write songs that were heavier to kind of show off that narrative versus the kind of slower songs to get the narrative to where you want to go? Was that a conscious thing, or was it just kind of what happened with getting the songs out there? Because if I could just kind of
Mhm.
sidetrack here, because when I was listening to it, it felt like this slower, I guess for lack of a better word, songs on the album was like, okay, this is where the narrative's going, and it did capture the feeling of everything that was happening throughout like the lyrics and the songs and everything like that. So I was like, damn, if this was just a happy accident, how it all worked out, he did such a good job, and even if it was on purpose, he did an amazing job capturing
Yeah.
like all of this stuff. So I'm curious how that kind of happened.
I mean, it's intentional on one hand,
Mhm.
like for sure, but I think you do it in it's like bite-sized pieces of a shit sandwich, like that old joke. It's like how to eat a shit sandwich one bite at a time. And so it's like knowing that I was trying to do some different stuff, like most of it, because I'm writing a book, and so some of these ideas and some of the lines are lifted straight from that, right? So it's like I
Yeah.
have shit ton of like fiction narrative that I'm working. I have a whole story arc in my head and like that I'm pulling from these things, right? And so like I have things that I wrote where I'm like, that's a great lyric. That's a chorus right there. That'll work. So it's like put that over here on like a post-it note, and then it's like playing a riff, like the Prayer Lips one. It's like I'm playing this finger picking pattern, and it's just like a thing that I'm living with that I'm just compelled to just keep playing this, and embellishing hammer-ons and whatever. And
Yeah.
so then like at some point it's like what what feels right over that song, and so there's like some kind of like forlorn, like lovesick, like dealing with loss, things happening in this like book. So it's like, well, that kind of feels this way. Kind of like the way, like, like if you were a film director, like principal photography, it's like if you want to do something, have like really like make the colors blue and dark and a lot of like emotion that way, you could have
Yeah.
a character not say anything, but the way you light a shot and the way that you present that can like almost give you like put you there without even having dialogue, right? Or
Yep.
like
Yeah,
a
absolutely.
performance. And so I think with a record like this, some of that is it kind of tells you where you want to go, So it's intentional to try to do it. But what ends up happening sometimes, it's like I wanted to add different instrumentation. I was thinking it would be like some fiddle or some pedal steel, but then I'm hanging out. The homie RJ's kicking it. He's like, "Yo, I'm a like incredible saxophone player," and it's like, "Well, fucking
I love a good saxophone.
roll, like
Yeah.
roll up, like fucking, let's do it." So I think like we got lunch and like I think Sam left or something that night, so we were just kicking it like, and I had the idea like I love Springsteen and like a lot of the rock and roll bands with sax anyway, so stuff like that. It's like was that intentional when I wrote the initial riff and then when I put lyrics and rearranged the song? No, but intentional because I wanted to have something that felt like the blues and felt like a totally different vibe than like an aggressive, thrashy song. So I think some of the stuff you just got to be open to, you just got to be mindful of like the song, serve the song. And if the
Yeah.
song is heading this way, like don't be an asshole and try and like make it fit in a box because like I think Prayer Lips is cool and it's got like a whispered vocal delivery that like I've never done that before in my life. But it felt like how do I get the words on top of this song that like works? It's like I think this is cool. Put some sax on it. And then like when you're done, I've had a couple people tell me like the transition from that to like waiting on the Reaper. It's like, holy shit, how'd you do that? It's like,
Yeah.
I don't know. Like,
Just happened.
I don't know exactly. I mean, I did it, but that's why like the next record won't be this either. It's
Yeah.
like, because some of that stuff, like, I think if you try too hard, it just something feels off about stuff. It's like, so on the next record, I'm not gonna like look at this formula and be like, oh, people really like this, so I need to have like a ballad with some blues and then into a fucking like big Lars fucking Tom thrash intro riff. Like
Yeah. So how did the collaboration with the dude from Black Braid come about? Do you guys know each other? Or was it just like something that kind of happened naturally? Because man, that
yeah,
caught me off guard. I was like, this is what the fuck? This isn't Stu. Like, who's doing the vocals on this? And when I got the press release, looking it up, I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense. And I can't pronounce his stage name, so I didn't, I
yeah,
didn't
it's
answer.
like he's cool. Like I love Blackbird. Like when he put out his the first Blackbird record came out, and then he did the second one like a year later. But
Yeah.
that was at the same time that like Pagan Rhythms had just come out, and then Death Western was coming out. So as I was like doing press for my record, and like I pay attention to stuff more when I'm doing it, where it's like then like I'm getting tagged on all this shit, and then I like I'm like seeing reviews for other bands. And so like Black Braid got out there enough where like I had checked him out. And then my girl's not like a huge metalhead, but like somehow she was checking out Black Braid and was just like, yo, check this out. Just to like turn me on to it. But he just reached out after when he was working on the second Black Braid album, he hit me up and was like, yo, love Death Western, fucking got this song where I want to do like a solo on it, like a thrashy one. And so our lead guitar player Randy did a solo on the Black Braid 2 record. And
Oh, nice.
then um I forget what I was doing, but I didn't have vocals at the end of that part. And then after I had Zach from Rise Against did a solo on it, I was like, it really needs a vocal here. And then I I wrote the words to it and was like, I think there's a demo somewhere of like me doing a scratch version of that. But then I just like was trying to think of like what would be cool here. And I didn't want to do somebody that sounded anything like me. And
Hmm.
so then I don't know why, but I was just like, maybe I was listening to Black Braid or something. I was like, you know what? I should fucking, I should just see if he'll do it. And so then it just worked out. Like, I got really lucky on this with the features where everybody that I hit up, all my homies were just super cool. Like Fred from Creator, Zach, um, just super nice when you send people a song and like they just fucking crush it, give them a few notes, but basically they are on the same wavelength, really care about doing cool stuff, and like it translates.
Yeah, it was fun, man. Like just that little difference of vocals was like such a tonal shift, but it still worked in the whole of the record that I was like, God damn, that was a nice little like you said guest spot there. Like it was
Yeah.
fun, man.
I
Especially
tried
with that
when we
song.
were practicing for we just played a couple shows, first shows we played since like last March, and we played that song. And when we practiced and rehearsed, we only had one night to rehearse before we left. And so like I tried to do his vocals, and one I don't have him memorized because he did a totally different pattern on some stuff. And so then I got it to a point where I'm like, well, it's different and it's my take on his thing, but it's kind of cool. And then when we played live, I was just like, nope, I can't really remember the words. Like, and so I think I just did the Oblivion screams, but like totally chicken shitted out and was like, yeah, I'm not. So maybe on this next tour we do all. I think he's gonna come out. I don't know where we're playing in New York, but I was texting with him and maybe he'll come out and just do the part and I won't have to worry about it. You know what I
Oh, that'd
mean?
be
That
sick. Yeah.
that would be the best case scenario, but I feel like his part's so cool, like, but it's also very difficult to do what he did because he's holding out those screams. I'm like, that's not something you can just have a roadie or a merch dude jump up and like belt out. So I feel like a responsibility to get my karaoke version of the Black Braid vocal that I can give people.
I guess you could use a backing track or AI, why not?
Yeah, like see that shit never crosses my mind. Like I just saw a band on that festival we were doing and they did who the fuck was POD.
Mhm.
Uh I watched half their set. They played twice, but the second time they did a song where Randy from Lamb of God does a feature. And they literally were like talked it up. They're like, yeah, this fucking we played with Lamb of God on this festival a few years ago. Then he did this song and we're homies now. And they just played it over the thing, tracks. And I was just like mind blown. Cause I was like, looking, I'm like, is that motherfucker on the boat? Like, is he coming up to do his part? Sick. And then no. And I mean, they have like DJ tracks. They have a lot of
Yeah,
weird
yeah.
shit going out of those speakers. Like they have a four-piece band, but like for them, not a person I don't think cared. Maybe half the people didn't know what was happening, but to me, I was like, wow, fucking guest vocal right over the fucking PA. Crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a strange one for me too. Like I've only seen two bands that have used like backing tracks when they're playing live, and one straight up like the guitar was the backing track and the guitar player wasn't even playing the same riffs, and I was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, you guys are just jumping around on stage miming to your music. Like, that's not even cool. And they're touring with a band who's been around for like 30 years, and they're like a newer band, so it's like almost insulting, in my
Yeah.
opinion, to the older band who's been like busting their ass for all those years. But I
Yeah,
mean,
that
kids
stuff,
loved it. It was packed. So
like
teach their own,
I
man.
I feel the same way because we play a lot of shows where bands are doing all these cool things with tracks,
Yeah.
and then people like almost to a man unanimously are like, "Oh, that's tight." And so if you have like a fake orchestra part and you're a black metal band, like even if you have a keyboard player, you may have like a very intricate like 8 part like orchestra going and you can play that over tracks and nobody bats an eye. Or you see like a hip hop band, like I've seen some pretty fucking sick hip hop shows in my life where it's like, you know, one
Yeah,
dude's up
everything's backing track on
spitting the
those.
verse, and then when it comes to the chorus, like it's karaoke.
Yeah.
But when you see that with 10,000 people that know every word, there's energy up the ass and it's incredible. So I have a hard time like making rules like, did I think it was crazy that POD had a Lamb of God feature? Yes.
Yeah.
But was I a little jealous where I'm like, fuck, it could be that easy. Just fucking, play it. But
Hit the
to
hit the play
me,
button.
yeah, to me, like my band, we play stuff and we practice and we try and get tight and we really like we know that our live show is not these records, it's a different experience. But
Yeah.
we like we like to play live music, and if you fuck up or you're playing faster or something happens, like sometimes I think that stuff's really cool, like
I mean,
because
I
you're making
agree,
up
man.
as you
Like,
go sometimes, like sometimes the solos, like when Randy can't tour with us and we have a fill-in,
huh?
like I don't ask them to learn the exact solo because I think a guitar player ripping a solo is like it's like a painter, it's like what are you going to do? Tell them to like magically have this same style. And it's to me, so then I have a guy ripping a new solo. And I kind of like the idea of, well, not even the idea. Like, I like the experience of like, we go into a song and maybe there's not a solo on the album. And I'll be like, hey, on this fast part, just play a solo when we do it live. And then every once in a while, the solos that have been played, I'm just like, fuck, that is sick. And you see people like that are watching the band just like, doing the, oh yeah, woo. So to me, like backing tracks, like if it works for you, great. But like there's some magic when people just play their instruments. You know what I mean? And I grew up with bands like that. So I'm an old fucking, I guess I'm from the old school. So I think that's special. It's magical.
No, I'm with you. I'm not I look younger than I actually am. But I'm with you on that, man. Like, I would much rather see a band and they fuck up live or sound kind of off or whatever, or even they sound better, than they usually do. Because like the record is meant to be like that immaculate piece of like, this is what we sound like, perfect. And that's
Yeah.
fine. That's why I want to listen to a record. But when I go see a band live, I want to hear the rawness of everything. I want to hear the fuck ups. I want to hear the, you know, oops, I hit that string when I wasn't supposed to, or whatever, like that's the fun of a live show. And like listening to a backing track is, I get it. You want to put on a show as much as play a show, but yeah, I don't know. It's a double-edged sword, I guess. It's kind of like,
Yeah. And I think when you like if you have lights that are once you start tying your whole live show to where it's like you have a laptop that's running the show and you have your MIDI controlling
yeah,
all the lights, all these intricate things, then it doesn't leave a lot of room for, anything to happen because if you get off from the thing, it's like, but I like the light shows a lot better of bands that are running, to a session that have like everything mapped out that are perfect than I do the old school style when you've got some old boy jumping on the house lighting system and, he's doing his thing that doesn't really go in time and it's not as dramatic or cool. So for me, like I would love to do a big stage production. And when it gets to that point, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but like I definitely want it to be like a perfectly synchronized thing. But then where do you draw the line of like keeping all the parts moving at the same speed, you know? Because you can't
Yeah.
do it all. Our drummer's been using a click in his ear for
Uh-huh.
the last probably year or so. Like he puts a little like his own mixer, and then uh it's funny because he changed a bunch of the tempos of the songs. So I was like playing guitar, relearning this 14 song set, and just like I didn't play guitar, but I was just like doing it to do it, you know? And a couple of the fucking down picking parts, I'm like, Jesus Christ, this is fucking hard to play. Like it's been a while since I played this, but like I hit him up and he's like, oh yeah, the tempo, it's faster. I made it faster. I'm like,
Mother.
fuck. And it's like, and then he just hits me with a text. He's like, mo faster, mo better. And I'm like, well, fucking there it is, you know? And he's got the clicks, so that's the speed that this shit is. So it's like, you better get your forearm ready, you know, to down pick fast as fuck, because mo faster, mo better, baby.
Yeah, dude, the band that I used to work for and tour with, after like the first year or two of touring with them, there were some songs that I noticed they started playing like way faster than was what was on their record. And I asked them about that one night, and they were like, "Oh yeah, we just got so used to playing these songs, like we can play them that fast now." And I was like, "What the fuck?
Yeah.
Like that's crazy, dude."
Yeah.
I get it
We
though.
play
I mean, you get
something
so used to it, it's
faster.
like, "Oh yeah, I can just fucking blah blah, blah. Like whatever."
Yeah, and like without the click, because the first, I don't know, 5 tours we did where we just play together, you know, and you end up in this space where like what feels good, and then you listen back to it and you're like, for us, it's fast as fuck. So it's like when I make the tempo on the record, I'm like, this feels good. And then you get in a room with 5 guys and play it, and it's like what feels good then with the aggression and the energy is like always what I would consider to be way too fast on the record. So that's another thing. That's why the live shows are cool. Like, you know, going back to the AI thing, it's like a record is cool, but a live show is a totally different thing. And like, you know, listen to the Ramones, like the fucking Loco Live or whatever, that one from Barcelona. Like you listen to the old Ramones records where it's like from where they were doing on those last tours where everything is as fast as they can play it. I mean, that
Yeah.
shit's like double time. And those, like I heard some of those live recordings when I was like younger and loved them. And when I heard the original versions, I was like, what the fuck, man? This shit is
It's so
so
slow.
fucking slow and dragging. Like, where is the fucking balls? So to me, I've always like appreciate when a band is playing live and they're just like, you know, cooking as fast and hard as they can play. Like I personally think that's the shit, you know?
That kind of brings up another question I was curious about. As far as like recording versus playing live, like are you the only guy that records everything? Like are you like the main dude, or uh does
For
everybody else like kind of come in and do like drums and bass and stuff as well?
yeah, the when I write stuff, I program drums and like get it to a point. And then our drummer, Preston Harper, is amazing. And so the first 2 records, I had friends of mine and Sam Pura's do the drums for us.
Okay.
And then um, on this record, Preston came in and played them all. But like the rhythm guitars, on the new record, I did all the rhythm guitars, acoustics,
Wow.
like most of the like rockabilly, like kind of leady stuff is all me. And then Nick and Matt came up, but they were only there for a couple days, so they were like doing gang vocals. And then our producer did the bass. And so I mean, I guess the answer is no. Like the band doesn't do it, but it's more of a it's kind of a glorified solo studio project as far as the writing stuff. And that's
Okay.
one thing that I really want to also capture now that I've made a couple records and I like get to reset my goalposts of how I want to do things. I really like the idea of writing songs, getting tight in a room, and then recording them live with the band, and then, of course, do overdubs or whatever, make it tight. But
Right.
I'm definitely going more that way of like, and that's just like stuff I like. My favorite records are guys in a room playing and then comp together the best takes and whatever has the most magic. And I know in a lot of metal stuff, it's so cold and sterile and edited that people don't do that anymore. But
Yeah, especially nowadays, man. It's
yeah.
everything sounds a
And
little too perfect.
yeah, and I like both. I like really big, like overly produced stuff, and I like really raw things. But I
Sure.
really like great songs. So if you have a great song, like I think you can pick 10 different ways to engineer and produce the record, and
Yeah.
a great song is probably still going to be great, and I'm going to love it. You know what I mean? Like how many bands have worked with like completely different teams throughout their career and their discography. And it's like, I'm a geek about that stuff, but if you were to ask a layman, maybe they would assume, that this band is uses the same people when really, totally different approaches. And I think you can have a great record like a thousand different ways.
Yeah, that's been one of the cool things. Like, as long as I've been doing this podcast, it's usually why I ask about that, is because like there's so many different ways to record a record, even though you think there's only like two or three. But like, I've
Yeah.
heard so many different varying stories and like crazy things about making a record that I'm like, wait, you did what when doing that? Like, how is that even possible? I think
Yeah,
that's the
we
fun
do
of it, though.
crazy shit. So like Sam Pure is my brother in arms on the producing end, and like
Uh-huh.
he really loves pop music. Where I say that like I don't listen to a lot of pop music, he loves it, loves some of the shit that like I can't even understand the appeal. He's like listening to fucking
See a
God,
Swifty?
like Kim Petras, like I'm the fucking throat goat, fucking like just over the top crazy shit where I'm just like, and he's bumping it, like loving it. And so a couple of the things through these three records that we wanted to try, like on Death Western, really wasn't happy with. Like I love the way it sounds. We did the best we can, but you get the chance when you make multiple albums to say, well, this is what we were actually going for. Let's try something else. And so, because we had Thomas Pridgeon, incredible drummer playing, but like he came in to do the tracks, and it's like maybe there's some stuff that's like raw and not there, and there's kick, and now it's bleeding into the overheads and into the snare mics, and there's stuff where it's like because of that you can't manipulate the record to get what we're going for. And so then going through, because we're both record nerds, it's like why do certain records sound the way they do? And like I go down these rabbit holes with all these albums and producers and engineers and studios, and it's like I really like the stuff that Jeff Lynne was doing. And reading up on some of his stuff, I'm just like, well, he is recording all these drums and he's separating the feet from the hands. And so it's
Mm.
like you're doing a Tom Petty record, and it's like he's tracking it, but you don't have to worry about the bleed of the snare, the kick, or the toms being in the overheads because you don't play the fucking kit. So it's like you got the guy tracking the hi-hat and it's just
That's
the hi-hat.
that's
And
clever.
so like, yeah, so we did that approach on this record, which if you were to ask Preston, he'd be like, fuck you both. Like this shit sucks.
Yeah, I can
But
imagine.
the cool, yeah. And the cool thing about like being the one that makes the choices is like you get to experiment. And so, is it a great experience for your drummer who learned all these songs and just like ready to rip? And then you're like, okay, play the kick. And then I already have all the guitars written and probably some vocals on there too. And so I have all the MIDI drums mapped out. And then it's like punch him in. And then, he does a take and it's like amazing, but I need you to really fucking hammer the kick. Like it's got too much, like there's too much variation, you know what I mean? And so then, you got a dude sitting there fucking boom, 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 boom. Like, so I mean, we're crazy. Like no other bands do shit like that. And I know I'm crazy, and Sam knows he's crazy. but like what you follow the like the blueprint of the people that make stuff. And like when I listen to the Queens of the Stone Age record that like Dave Grohl was on drums that Eric Valentine did, they did the
Yeah.
same thing. And so it's like you listen to that record a million times and you dig into it, and like Sam's obsessed with Eric Valentine, and like you listen to these things and you're like, well, let's try it. Like, don't reinvent the wheel. Like these guys that were getting paid hundreds of thousands and spending a year on a record and working with the biggest folks who've tried all this shit. Like, let's see what happens. And so I'm really happy, like, probably won't make a record like that again. You know what I mean? Like, it's one of those things, like, maybe try something completely different because I tend to do that too. But it's like, it's cool to, as you're working on stuff, solve one problem, create a new problem. But
Yeah.
then because of the way you do things, you end up with this unique thing. And like no one else will listen to the record and like hear all the crazy stuff truly that's happening on it. But the way that a record makes you feel and the way that you get to that point, like there's definitely so many thousands and thousands of hours that we've spent like dissecting other people's records that make us feel a certain way, that like when you talk about how the record like flows and like all of those things, it's like
Yeah.
there are so many layers of like how we did these things, that from like having stereo like mics on the acoustic guitars, and then not only quad tracking but harmonizing them, and so you end up with like fucking 16 stereo pairs of guitars. And like to somebody that can't pick it out, it's like sounds beautiful, sounds like a couple guitars, and it's like we played that shit fucking like 8 goddamn times, and it's all like EQ'd separately and differently, and it's
Jeez.
like the movie magic going on inside of the record is like, me and Sam could talk to somebody for like 100 hours, laugh and explaining like all the crazy shit we do. But that's why like when you make records with people who love your band and love what you're trying to do, that are willing to like go completely nuts, it's the best, rather
Yeah. And
than somebody a shitload and you get 2 weeks and they're done at 5, and when time's up, fuck you, gotta go.
yeah. Yeah. And I love hearing about stuff like that where it's like hearing about all the intricacies and like weird things that you experimented with trying to make the record. Um,
Yeah.
Because weirdly enough, a lot of bands don't talk about that. Like they're just like, oh yeah, we went in there and took 6 weeks and we did this and then we were done. But it's like,
Yeah.
well, what did you do while you were in there? Like you had to have tried some weird things with the instruments and like how you
Yeah, and
recorded it. And
people are precious about things too, and like they feel
true.
like it's
Yeah.
taboo or they feel weird. But like to me, like when you listen to a couple of those like drum like build up parts on the record where it has like the toms, I'm like, I want them big, like bigger. So it's like we had one big nice floor tom, but it's like I want it in stereo. Sam, like, what are we gonna do here? And he's like, well, what we're gonna do is we're gonna fucking do it over here. Then we're gonna move the fucking drum, tune it, same fucking big floor tom, and then we'll do it on this side on these mics so that we actually have a stereo image of the toms. And so, yes, when you play live, you can't possibly have your guy. He would need an extra set of, you know, fucking floor toms and shit. But like, those are all things where it's like the song is important. So like this part is now important. How do we make this as cool as we can? And when somebody listens to it and like they hear the toms in their headphones and they're like, I'm sure somebody will do it to me. Some drummer or some producer will be like, wow, that sounds incredible. It's like, yeah, that's what half a day of fucking like, how do you make this cool? You know, giving a
How
shit.
does this drum fucking make you want to go, damn, man, like this is fucking
Yeah,
going.
for 8 hits or whatever it is, it's like
Jesus.
maybe it's 16 hits, but like spend fucking 8 hours one day just tweaking, trying to figure out, which fucking, all that kind of stuff, man. It's
Yeah.
like, and then you have this signal, you have the right mic, you shoot out all the mics, and it's like, what preamp are you going into? how how hot are you running it, then what compressor. And it's like when you have the best gear and you have the best ideas and then you shoot them all out, you end up like that's why I also hate all these songs, you know, like and hate the record. Like I'm joking, I don't hate it, I'm proud
No,
of
I
it,
know.
but it's like
You're always
I
the
want
most critical of your own work.
yeah, and I
Every
just like
artist.
I've listened to this stuff in detail of every fucking possible thing and wore it out. You know, it's like
Yeah.
a dish wring out all the fucking all the water, and when you're done, the record's coming out and people want to talk about it, and you're like, I hate that fucking shit. You realize how many fucking hours I spent at Panda Studios, like trying to make this cool. Like I'm so over it. On to the next one. Like ready to torture myself with a whole new like floor tom issue. You know,
Well, one last thing I do want to ask you here, because I don't want to take up too much more of your time, but and I know this might be a hard question to answer, but let's just say dream scenario. Somebody was like, "Hey man, I want to make a movie or a TV show out of your narrative. Who would you want to direct? Who would you want to star in it? Would you want to be hands-on or kind of hands-off? Like, how would you want that to to life outside of music and outside of a book, as far as like a movie or TV show?"
film wise, I write, I direct, starring shit. Robert Duvall, Josh
Ooh.
Brolin, um, Patricia Arquette.
Oh
I don't know.
man.
I'd have to think of the characters and think of who, but like,
Yeah. It's already
yeah, I
good. I
could.
mean, those are three great actors and actresses. Yeah.
Yeah, give me the money, give me the shot. Like, I'll make it fucking like it'll be worth your time. You know, have
I
lots of
mean,
lizard babies fit for all my eraser heads out there.
I mean, the fact that you can already kind of do this stuff though through the music videos to kind of get like where you're kind of going with the narrative and like what you're wanting to accomplish with it, like that's a small part of it. So that's awesome to be able to like do that, I assume.
You can do anything you set your mind to if you have taste and have a vision. Like I write all these guitar parts, and then when we play live, I sing. But we've played with some of my favorite bands and like had some of the most like influential and sickest guitar players of me personally, like come up to my like homie Matt that plays rhythm guitar and be like, dude, your fucking band is so sick. Your fucking riffs are so great. And like they don't know like the makeup of the band, but then they'll like tell me about it, and I'm just like, that's insane. Like I'm not even a musician. Like I'm not a guitar god by no means. I'm just like some bro. But same thing. It's like I think you can do that with anything. Like make a film. Fuck yeah. I'll make a fucking badass film, Just
You
like a
should.
riff. It's like you don't
Yeah.
have to be a guru to fucking make something sick.
I think Western horror is severely lacking. I can name probably like five films off the top of my head of
Yeah. I
Western
mean,
horror.
I,
So
that's kind of where, people when they hear Death Western are always like they get caught up thinking it's just the musical part. And I'm like, no, it's
yeah,
fucking combining like death metal and westerns, like
yeah,
Western films, Western fucking fiction. Like that's kind of the thing. So for me, like horror westerns, all that, like I would love to at some point, like I just want to create this, like keep putting out this story because I'm pretty invested in it. It's fun, Like at the
yeah,
end of the day, you're having fun making stuff. It's cool.
yeah. Well, Stu, man, that's all I got, man. So as far as like the record, I'm gonna hold this back until closer to when it actually comes out. But for when people
Yeah.
will be listening to and watching this, where can people find it? Follow you? Any tours after the record comes out and stuff like that?
Yeah, so the record will be out everywhere. We have a merch store, Spirit World Profit. You can buy stuff directly from us, keep the machine pumping. But we do a full US tour, like not quite a month after the album comes out. So March 21st, Helldorado comes out, and then I think April, maybe like 19th, we start off in San Antonio with Obituary, Nails, Terror, Spirit World, and Pest Control. Like
Damn.
fucking crazy good lineup. So that's like a 5 week run in the US. So we'll be out till almost the end of May with that. And then um we're figuring out what we're doing in the fall. So I think we'll definitely do another US tour this year. So yeah, we'll be around. Like you may have to drive a little bit because I know some homies in Vancouver already hit me up talking shit, being like, what the fuck? No Western Canada. How is this a North American tour, you pussies?
I know,
So
right?
hopefully we get close enough to folks because I know we don't tour a lot and people always hit me up and like I get it. I want to see my favorite bands too. So you'll have a few shots, you know. We're gonna have like, you know, 70 days on the road in the US by the end of the year. So come find us.
That's pretty good. Yeah. I mean, that's man, I mean, I can't imagine like touring for a full year anyways. Like, a lot of bands, sometimes I talk to bands, they're like, "Oh yeah, we tour like 7 months out of the year." And I'm like, "What the fuck?" Like, that's
Yeah.
insane, dude.
I
But
mean, bless their hearts, like I get it. But all of us, like we're a little older and we all have careers and stuff. And
yeah.
like being honest, like being on tour is great, but it's like to me, I like to do things when it's fun and exciting. And I don't like the things that I really love, like my band and shit like that, to be a slog. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like I have a day job that like I have to compromise and do some things, but I'm like financially very well compensated. And so then going out and doing a couple US tours on this record where everybody in the band's going to be hella excited for every show, like it's a pretty fucking great way to do it. You know what I mean? Rather than living in a van. Like, because when we tour, we don't do hotels and shit. Like, we're punk rockers. We fucking keep up with Obituary's bus by like, we drive, go to a rest stop, spend the night, drive to Planet Fitness. Bunch of us have uh, memberships, go in, work out. Everybody has showers, go to load in, repeat. If I were to do that for 7 months, like I wouldn't have to make a horror Western film. I would be like in a true crime fucking documentary from like cutting my bass player's head off and burying it in the desert behind, the last Planet Fitness that I stepped in some sick fucking bastard's pubes in the shower.
Ugh.
But that's just me.
Well, hey, I'll tell you this, having toured with Obituary once, Trevor loves hot sauce, their guitar player,
Yeah.
and they all love football. They will not get off their bus if there's a football game. So don't expect to hang out with them if there's a football game going on.
Yeah, they're cool. We did some shows on the Decibel tour a few years ago. Like,
Yeah.
great guy. Yeah, I'm excited. It's gonna be a good tour, man.
Yeah, man. Good luck. Congratulations on the new record. And man, seriously, thank you for taking the time to do this, man. I really, really appreciate it. Sincerely.
Yeah, man. Appreciate you.
Yeah, dude. Um, yeah, man. I'm gonna hold this back until probably like a couple weeks until the record comes out. Just to not like get it too
Yeah.
far in advance where people, forget about shit because that's what happens nowadays. But yeah, I'll be sure to like tag the band and everything and let Curran know when all that stuff's going up and everything like that.
Yeah, just let me know and I'll repost whatever. Like, I don't get on Instagram very often.
Okay.
I'm terrible at all that like
Yeah.
side, and I'm the guy that does it. So it's
Okay.
like just hit me up and let me know and I'll like spread the word. But yeah, thanks for
Cool.
taking the time, man.